Here is the solutions lecture, something that we're going to be talking about in class in addition to the social science thinking stuff as usual. Now, as I talked about in the last module, one of the real important themes in this course is that not only do we talk about global problems, we also talk about solutions to those problems. And part of those solutions are embedded, in my opinion, in the idea of social science thinking and using science to answer the sorts of questions that we have about the world. But there are other types of solutions as well. And these solutions include, for the most part, different types of developmental issues and developmental solutions. All sorts of different types of people and organizations that are asking the questions, how can we make the world healthier? How can we better educate people? How can we make people more affluent as well in a fair and just way? There are all sorts of different types of solutions, and each module is going to address a different type of solution. For this day, we will be talking about holistic development efforts. Holistic development efforts are probably the broadest form. These are organizations that are trying to solve really big picture issues. So instead of just trying to solve one particular problem, they try to fix a bunch of different problems to get to sort of the root problems in a particular community through a project. Usually these holistic development efforts use one particular focus as a way to transform the place that they're trying to deal with. And each one has a different type of sort of focus, and I'll talk about this in just a little bit. Now, it's also worth noting that there are different types of problem solvers as well. There are many different types of movements, different types of agencies that try to solve development problems. We're going to be looking, for the most part, at what are called non-governmental organizations, or NGOs. These are private, non-profit charitable organizations that are engaged in trying to solve problems. When we talk about other problem solvers, I'll make sure to mention them and define them a little bit. Now, for this first NGO that we're going to look at, it's called Heifer International, and many of you are probably familiar with it. It is probably best known because Heifer International uses these alternative gift catalogs, particularly at the holidays, where people can buy a goat to help someone in the underdeveloped world, and then you can give that goat to an aunt as a gift for Christmas or something like that, non-material gifts. You're really just giving a donation. And we can talk about this in class if you want to, especially the fact that you don't really give a goat, you're sort of giving at the goat level. Heifer International, and by the way, the term heifer refers to a cow, is an organization that focuses largely on agricultural development. They use animals and the training associated with animals to improve living conditions, to help to fix environmental problems, and also to promote social justice. And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in class. Now, in the case of Heifer International, the methodologies really use animal husbandry. And the idea of passing on the gift, which you're going to be looking into a little bit more, and you're going to be looking into Heifer generally by exploring its website a bit. But the idea of passing on the gift is that when an animal is brought into a community that needs agricultural development, that animal is eventually going to give birth to progeny, and that animal will then be passed on to another family. So you have this sort of ever-expanding development effort taking place. But it's really important to note that Heifer International programs are really a lot more about just a single animal. They're really about large-scale education efforts as well, ways to transform agricultural systems that are done within that country. So it's not people coming from outside teaching people how to do things. It's would be people in the West African country of Senegal teaching other Senegalese different agricultural methods. The organization also focuses on what they call community-based, values-driven development. And so this means that the community itself is really responsible for its own development. And again, it's not imposed from outside. Instead, what happens is you have organizations you have an organization that's really focused on finding ways for the community to empower itself as it engages in development projects. The sorts of impacts that Heifer International tries to get at include food and economic security, gender equity, social justice, healthy environment, strong communities. So you can see they're trying to do a bunch of different things. The problem is, of course, people are hungry. People are food insecure. Well, the argument goes that the way to solve that isn't just to provide food or a handout. Instead, what you want to do is you want to engage in a whole bunch of different development efforts that work at solving the root problems of the poverty that creates the hunger. And again, we can explore this more in class and talk a lot more about it. I'll look at a particular sample project, not on day 3, but I've got a sort of a special day that we'll be working on Heifer International stuff. And we'll talk a little bit there more specifically about a particular project in Honduras that I had the chance to visit, where Heifer International had introduced agroecological techniques to the community. And I'll talk more about that when we get to that in class. This was a project that included the animal gifts of cows, chickens, and bees, as well as a set of strategies and education about ways to prevent erosion and to cycle nutrients on really steep slopes, and also to encourage the community not to engage in as much deforestation as it had before. In addition, the project had a sort of community capacity building element to it as well, health and nutrition campaigns that were focused on doing more than just providing the food, but providing solutions and also empowering the local community to deal with the issues that they were facing. They also had gender equity meetings and plannings that specifically involved women to bring them into the development process, which is really important in Heifer International projects. So again, a lot more about Heifer International in class, and then also in the special class where we're going to look at it in somewhat more detail. It's worth noting that Heifer International is one of many, many organizations that does this sort of holistic development. And we're not going to talk about many of these over the course of the semester because this is really where we focused on holistic ones. But here are some ones that you might have heard of before that I know specifically about. Partners in Health that works on healthcare issues all around the world, but a lot of their work is focused in Haiti. They're not just trying to provide health, but also to solve the root problems of health problems. Trees for the Future is an organization that engages in reforestation. But again, instead of just planting trees, they try to do development projects that try to reduce the need to engage in deforestation. Water Aid is an organization that, again, holistically tries to solve the problems of water scarcity in different parts of the world. They do a lot of work in Africa in particular, and we'll probably mention them later on when we are in the Islamic Empire lecture cycle, where we'll talk about water scarcity. Plan International is a holistic organization that also does some other kind of work as well that we may have a chance to talk about later on in the course, but they focus on children's development. Free the Slaves is an organization focused on reducing the problems of human trafficking in the world, again with big projects that help to reduce the demand and also the supply of people who are trafficked. And Women to Women International is an organization that works specifically on women's development, helping women to find new livelihoods, especially in war-torn areas. And there are many, many other organizations that do this sort of work, but these are just some other ones that I know of that are pretty reputable that you might look into a little bit. We'll talk more about this notion of holism and development later on. So look forward to class and talking about all of these things in more detail with you.